When you're working with someone like Shaun, when you're doing Mad
Yeah,
as Hell, uh,
yeah,
super intelligent guy, uh,
yeah,
obviously a great team of writers. He would have his own set of ideas.
yeah.
When you're producing something like that,
Hmm.
how open does the team have to be to work well?
Well, in the case of Mad as Hell, it's all completely driven by Shaun as the kind of the voice of the show, the visual kind of, actual on-air presenter of the show, and very much everything is sort of filtered through the brain of Shaun, essentially. So in terms of what ends up in the show, it's not a collaborative relationship between writer and producer like it might be, say, when you're working on a drama, when a writer will come to you with an idea and go, I've got this germ of an idea. Here's maybe a first draft, or here's a treatment, a couple of pages. Let's work on it together and kind of build that out over a space of months or years or whatever. It was very much like, Shaun, and he is. I mean, I use the term genius, very sparingly, but in terms of comedy geniuses, I've never seen anyone like Shaun. He kind of has this razor sharp focus on what he wants to achieve, and how to put the show together. And it was a fascinating experience. It's a pretty quick turnaround. And he'd write enough material for two shows, and then we'd go into the edit, and he'd assemble it. We'd sort of go, okay. And he'd already would have worked out. He was literally like pulling things around like Minority Report, going this with this and this and this, and then kind of, he's very, very, very skilled at what he does. So that show was really set up as a kind of as a support network and a machine around Shaun. We go, okay, this is what we're doing. He'd come in with a script. I want to do this sketch. We're doing this, and we need to do this by Tuesday to have it ready for the show. So it was really just about, all right, how do we mobilize and go, let's execute that idea and do it quickly and efficiently. So that was what producing that show was about. And he would have he had a room of writers who would all be, they'd all be coming up with ideas, working on sketches. It'd all go through Shaun, and he would take, parts of, they'd collaborate and come up with things together. Some of it would just be Shaun. But really producing that it was just about facilitating the overall kind of, this is what the show requires. Let's go out and do it.
And when you were producing radio with Mick, was
Yeah.
it a similar experience where Mick had the vision as well? Because obviously,
Yeah. I mean, they're very different people.
people, yeah.
They work in very different ways, but essentially it is. And that was like, a very different. I mean, that was one of my first jobs. It was and I only did radio for a year, so I'm by no means a radio expert. But what I learned about it is just how important, getting the right guests is, people who are gonna facilitate good conversation with Mick. The way Mick works, it's essentially the same as what Shaun does, and for Mad as Hell, is because really you come in for a day of radio, you look at the papers, what are the big trending stories, what's funny, what's ridiculous, and both of them have a similar ability in being able to, you can look at a news story, it might be quite a serious story, but they both have the ability of let's focus on, there might be one thing in that, and it might be not what the story is about, but there's something in there that's ridiculous. What's the ridiculous thing? How do we tease out the comedy out of that, this particular story? And they both do that. It's essentially the same thing presented in a very different way. And obviously radio is much more ephemeral. You do a day of radio, you're out, it's gone, and then you're on to the next day. And it's kind of like which I actually loved, because you don't have to look back at it and go, oh yeah, we shot this, and oh, that didn't quite work, and how do we fix this, and how are we going to edit that to make it work? It's just like you do it and it's done. And some days you'll just have such a cracker of a show, and then other days you might go, oh, that was a bit flat, but on to the next one.
Yeah, Conan O'Brien described doing a daily show as a disposable pen. And
Yeah,
that got me when he
good
said that.
analogy.
Because I mean there was stuff with radio, just doing it for Brecky for 14 years, day after
Yeah, wow.
day. I'd talk to my mate Brad, who he's still working Brecky Radio. Hopefully
Yeah,
one day they'll let him free. But
never.
he loves it. But yeah, like Brad and I would talk about it all the time. We'd go, "Oh God, we've worked on all these sketches. There's so many great bits that we've got, da, da, da." And we're
Mm.
like, and it just goes into the ether. I mean, now you can chuck it up on a podcast as well,
You can
obviously,
podcast.
for later on. But that was always one thing, and as I said, like people that do the daily shows like Conan and other people, um, there is this understanding where we go, it's not like a movie in the way
No.
of, so there's a bit of disappointment in that as well. So there's fun because it's disposable, and if it goes haywire, nobody
Yeah,
remembers it and it goes. But there is that other bit where you go, I put so much work into it and it's not like a permanent piece.
yeah, that's true. And I think that very much comes down to the people who are writing it. Like if you're, I think I've known writers who've worked in those rooms, and you have to have the right temperament or mentality for it. If you're, because you can get very dissatisfied. It's just like, I'm just churning out stuff. Maybe 5% of it's making it to the air. I'm doing all this great stuff. It's not making it, and it's so disposable, as you say. But then, and then that's not really going to work out as a long-term thing. You might want to move on. But then I've known other people who are just wired in that way of like, they are just so good at just like pulling, go, what's funny about this? And then I can write you 5 jokes on that, in the space of 20 minutes. And it's an incredible skill. But yeah, it comes down to, if you're not, I can really understand why people would find that to be, unsatisfying. But at the same
Yeah.
time, some people might find it to be the most satisfying thing that they've ever done for the
There's
same reason.
there's something that, and we see it missing a lot these days, and it's really hard to explain to people because we've got podcasts and we've got all these other forms of entertainment now.
Yeah,
But live is a whole different feeling, and that kind
yeah,
of gives you a little bit of a payback for it being disposable because being live,
that's
it's
right.
literally anything can happen.
That's true. And you've got the laugh, you know what I mean? Like being live, it's like, and I guess you have, if you're a stand-up or whatever, you have the benefit of being able to, you can test out your material and you can work up your routine until it's, really, really super tight.
Mm.
I have definitely noticed, it's interesting when you see, like, I know comedians who are primarily like Instagram or TikTok comedians, you know, and you go, oh, I'm going to have a crack at doing something live. And just it's like, you can see people really, it's such a different experience and so terrifying. It's, yeah, it can be very tricky.
Yeah.